The courthouse smelled like old wood and broken families. I sat in the back row of the gallery, watching Dad's lawyer present documents to Judge Morrison. Dad sat at the plaintiff's table looking smug in his expensive suit the navy one Grandma had bought him 3 Christmases ago. "Your Honor," Dad's lawyer said smoothly, "this is a straightforward case. My client, Richard Bennett, is the sole surviving child of Dorothy Bennett. Her will clearly states." "Actually," I said quietly, standing up, "that's not accurate." Judge Morrison looked annoyed. "Young lady, this is not your case. Please sit down or I'll have you removed." "I filed a contestation 2 weeks ago," I said. "Case number 2024 PR 8847. Contesting the validity of Dorothy Bennett's will on grounds of undue influence, and I see no such filing," Judge Morrison interrupted, barely glancing at his notes. "Mr. Bennett is the sole heir. This hearing is to finalize estate distribution. Your disruption is noted but irrelevant." Dad turned to look at me, a small smile playing on his lips. "Give it up, Maya. You were always Grandma's charity project, not her family. Real blood gets the inheritance." My half-sister Courtney, sitting next to Dad, nodded. "It's embarrassing, honestly. Just accept that you don't belong here." I stayed standing. "Your Honor, I have documented evidence that this will was executed under suspicious circumstances. My grandmother's actual will, the one she filed with her attorney in 2019, names me as primary beneficiary. This version," I gestured to the document, Dad's lawyer held, was supposedly signed 6 weeks before her death when she was heavily medicated and enough. Judge Morrison said sharply, "I've reviewed the case materials. Everything is in order. Mr. Bennett has provided ample documentation. The 2023 will supersedes any previous versions. But Your Honor, Ms. Bennett, I'm warning you, one more outburst and you'll be held in contempt." Something was wrong. The judge wasn't even pretending to consider my arguments. He was rushing through this hearing like it had been decided before it started. Dad's lawyer smiled. "Your Honor, we move for immediate dismissal of any claims by Maya Bennett and request authorization to proceed with estate distribution." "Granted," Judge Morrison said without hesitation. "Estate valued at $2.7 million to be distributed to Richard Bennett as sole heir. Any claims by other parties are hereby dismissed." The gavel started to come down. I thought about Grandma Dorothy, about the last time I'd seen her, 3 months before she died. She'd been weak, but lucid, holding my hand in her hospice room while Dad and Courtney argued with nurses in the hallway about quality of care, which really meant, "When will this be over so we can get our money?" "Maya," Grandma had whispered, "there's something you need to know. In my safe deposit box, Bank of America, downtown branch, box 447. The key is in my jewelry box, inside the pearl earring case." "Grandma, don't talk like that. You're going to be fine." "Listen." Her grip tightened. "The key. The safe deposit box. There's a letter. If anything happens, if Richard tries anything, you open that box, you'll understand what letter." "Insurance," she'd said, "against men who think power makes them untouchable." I hadn't understood then, but standing in that courtroom, watching Judge Morrison collude with my father, I suddenly understood perfectly. "Your Honor," I said clearly, loudly, "before you finalize this ruling, I need to invoke judicial review protocol for cases involving potential conflicts of interest." Judge Morrison's hand froze mid-gavel. "Excuse me? I have reason to believe there may be undisclosed relationships between parties in this case that constitute grounds for recusal." Dad's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, this is a stalling tactic. Ms. Bennett has no evidence of any Project Midnight Rose," I said. The courtroom went silent. Judge Morrison's face drained of color. Actually drained, went from pink to gray in seconds. "What did you say?" His voice was barely audible. "Project Midnight Rose," I repeated. "October 2019 through March 2020. Judicial Ethics Complaint 202000847 filed confidentially with the State Ethics Board but never investigated due to insufficient evidence." Would you like me to continue, Your Honor, or would you prefer to recuse yourself voluntarily? Judge Morrison stood up so fast, his chair rolled backward and hit the wall. 10-minute dresses, everyone out. Now. The hallway erupted. What the hell was that? Dad grabbed my arm, his face red. What are you playing at? I pulled away. Don't touch me. You think you're clever? You think some made-up scandal is going to? It's not made up, I said quietly. And you know it. His eyes narrowed. What do you know? More than you think. Courtney appeared beside him, her expression poisonous. She's bluffing, say as to be. There's no way Mom left her anything that could, Grandma, I corrected. She was your grandmother, not your mom, though you never called her that when she was alive. Did you? It was always the old lady or Dorothy when you thought she couldn't hear. You self-righteous bitch, Courtney hissed. Dad's lawyer approached, looking pale. Richard, we need to talk. Privately. They moved to a corner. I could see Dad's lawyer whispering urgently. Dad's face growing redder. More. Ahit. I pulled out my phone and called the number Grandma had made me memorize. The one she'd made me repeat back to her 3 times that last day. A woman answered, Whitmore and Associates. This is Maya Bennett. Dorothy Bennett's granddaughter. I need to speak with Margaret Whitmore immediately. Ms. Whitmore is in a meeting. Tell her it's about the letter, the one Dorothy left in her safe deposit box. Tell her Project Midnight Rose just went active. There was a pause. Hold, please. 30 seconds later. Maya, this is Margaret. Where are you? County Courthouse. Hearing for Grandma's estate, the judge tried to dismiss my case without review. I said the code words Dide Recuse, called a recess. Hasn't come back yet. Good. Don't leave that courthouse. I'm 15 minutes away. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. And don't let them intimidate you. They're trying. I'm sure they are. 15 minutes. Hold the line. She hung up. Dad appeared in front of me. Who did you call? My lawyer. You don't have a lawyer. You can't afford one. Grandma can. Could. She arranged it all before she died. His jaw clenched. That manipulative old? Careful, I said. We're in a courthouse, probably not the best place to trash talk the deceased. You think you've won something? You think dropping some code phrase makes you important? You're nobody. Maya. You were nobody. To her too, just the granddaughter from the son she disowned, the pity case she kept around to feel charitable. Is that what you tell yourself? It's the truth. My mother might have felt guilty about your father, but that doesn't mean she wanted you to have her money. Blood is blood, and you're barely related. I'm as related as you are. We're both her grandchildren. You're the grandchild of her biggest mistake, Dad said. Your father was a failure and a disappointment, and she spent 20 years trying to pretend he'd never existed. You were just a reminder of that failure. It should have hurt. He'd been saying variations of this my whole life. But today, standing in this courthouse, remembering Grandma's last words, it just felt ... empty. If that's true, I said quietly, why did she leave me the letter? His face went still. What letter? The one in her safe deposit box. The one explaining everything. The one with copies of documents and recordings and evidence of things that powerful people really don't want made public. You're bluffing. Am I? The courtroom doors opened. The bailiff appeared. Judge Morrison has recused himself from the case. Judge Patricia Chun will be hearing this matter. 10 minutes. Dad grabbed my arm again. Listen to me very carefully. Whatever you think you have, whatever my mother told you, it's not enough. You're going to walk away from this. You're going to accept a settlement, let's say $50,000, and you're going to disappear from this family forever. Let go of me. $100,000, and final offer. More money than you'll see in years of working your little retail job. Take it and walk away. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then up at his face. I work in cybersecurity for a financial firm. I make $94,000 a year. I don't need your money. I need Grandma's truth. There is no truth. She was a senile old woman who, Mr. Bennett? A new voice. A woman in her 50s, gray hair pulled back, carrying a leather briefcase. Remove your hand from my client or I'll have you charged with assault. Dad let go. Margaret Whitmore, the woman said, extending her hand to me. Your grandmother was a good friend and a client for 30 years. Shall we? Judge Patricia Chun was everything. Judge Morrison wasn't focused, careful, actually reading documents. She listened to Dad's lawyer present his case. Then she turned to Margaret. Ms. Whitmore, I understand you're representing the contestation. I am, Your Honor. My client, Maya Bennett, is Dorothy Bennett's granddaughter and the named beneficiary in Mrs. Bennett's actual last will and testament, executed in 2019 and properly filed with this court. We have no record of such a will, Dad's lawyer said. That's because it was sealed, Margaret replied smoothly, per Dorothy Bennett's instructions, to be opened only upon her death, or if anyone attempted to contest the estate with a fraudulent will, which is precisely what has happened. She placed a document on the judge's bench. This is the authenticated 2019 will, with notarization, witness, signatures, and a letter of testamentary intent explaining why Mrs. Bennett took these unusual precautions. Judge Chun read in silence. Her eyebrows rose. Your Honor, Dad's lawyer said desperately, this is clearly a forgery. The will we submitted was witnessed by 2 nurses, and executed when Mrs. Bennett was on morphine and barely conscious. Margaret interrupted. My client has medical records showing Dorothy Bennett's mental state during that time period. She was incapable of executing legal documents. This is absurd. Dad stood up. My mother wanted me to have her estate. I was her son. You were her estranged son who hadn't spoken to her in 6 years until she was diagnosed with cancer, Margaret said coldly. Then you suddenly became very attentive, very concerned, very present, especially when discussing her assets. That's a lie. I have phone records. I have testimony from hospice workers. I have recordings, yes, recordings that Mrs. Bennett made of your visits where you discussed liquidating assets and maximizing estate value while she pretended to sleep. The courtroom went silent. Recordings? Judge Chun asked. Mrs. Bennett was many things. Margaret sighed, but naive wasn't one of them. When her son reappeared after years of absence, she became suspicious. She installed recording devices in her hospice room. Perfectly legal, it was her room, her care facility. She captured dozens of hours of conversation. Your Honor, this is entrapment, Dad's lawyer started. It's documentation, Margaret corrected, and it's admissible, but that's not even the most interesting part. She placed another document on the bench. This is a sworn affidavit from Judge Morrison, the judge who was originally hearing this case. In it, he acknowledges a previous relationship with Richard Bennett and admits that he was contacted 2 weeks ago about expediting this estate case. Judge Chun's expression hardened. Judge Morrison admitted to case fixing. After I showed him the evidence Mrs. Bennett had compiled, yes. It seems Richard Bennett and Judge Morrison belonged to the same country club, played golf together, and Richard promised certain ... considerations ... if the judge could ensure the estate went through quickly without scrutiny. This is insane, Dad shouted. You never explicitly bribed him. No, Margaret sighed. You were smarter than that. You implied. You suggested. You mentioned investment opportunities and golf trips and introducing him to the right people. All documented. All recorded. All part of Project Midnight Rose. I watched Dad's face cycle through emotions. Rage, fear, calculation, more fear. What? Judge Chun said slowly. Is Project Midnight Rose? Margaret smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Dorothy Bennett's insurance policy. You see, Your Honor, Mrs. Bennett was a federal prosecutor for 23 years before she retired. She knew how corruption worked. She knew how men like her son operated always, just careful enough to avoid explicit criminality, but willing to bend every rule that could be bent. She pulled out a thick folder. For the last 5 years of her life, Mrs. Bennet documented everything. Every suspicious interaction, every attempt by her son to access her accounts, every conversation where he tried to convince her to change her will, every instance of Judge Morrison showing favoritism to Richard Bennet in other legal matters. This wasn't the first time. "Your Honor, this is a witch hunt," Dad's lawyer said weakly. "This is evidence," Margaret countered, "evidence that would be very embarrassing to several prominent people if it became public. Evidence that Mrs. Bennet sealed in her safe deposit box with instructions. If anyone tries to steal from Maya, release everything." Judge Chun was reading the folder now, her expression growing darker with each page. "Why?" she asked finally. "Why go to these lengths?" "Because Maya was the only person who cared about her," Margaret said simply. "Not her money, not her estate. Her Reacher and Courtney visited when it was convenient or when they wanted something. Maya visited every week for years. Read to her, brought her favorite foods, sat with her during chemotherapy. The hospice staff called Maya the daughter because she was there more than Richard ever was." I felt my throat tighten. Dorothy Bennet wanted to ensure that the person who loved her inherited from her, and she wanted to ensure that the people who saw her as a paycheck could intermanipulate the system. Hence, Project Midnight Rosa, comprehensive documentation of corruption, fraud, and undue influence, ready to be released if anyone tried to cheat Maya out of her inheritance. Judge Chun closed the folder. "Mr. Bennet, I'm ordering a full investigation into this matter. In the meantime, the 2023 will is hereby declared invalid due to evidence of undue influence. The 2019 will stands." "Your Honor, you can't," Dad started. "I can, and I am. Furthermore, I am referring this case to the State Bar for investigation of potential attorney misconduct." She looked at Dad's lawyer, who'd gone pale, and to the Judicial Ethics Board regarding Judge Morrison. She turned to me. "Ms. Bennet, I'm sorry for what you've been put through. Your grandmother was clearly a remarkable woman." "She was," I whispered. "This court is adjourned. A state distribution will proceed per the 2019 will within 30 days. The gavel came down. The hallway was chaos. Dad was shouting at his lawyer. Courtney was crying real tears this time, not the performative kind. People were staring. Margaret pulled me aside. "Are you okay?" "I don't know what just happened." Ju 1. "Your grandmother left you everything, the house, the investments, her savings, approximately $2.7 million. The number didn't feel real. And Dad gets nothing. He gets what he gave Dorothy in her final years. Nothing." She paused. "Though, knowing your grandmother, she probably left him something symbolic. $1, maybe." She had a sense of humor. "I don't want his money." "It's not his money. It's yours. It was always meant to be yours. But why me? Why not split it between everyone?" Margaret smiled. "Because you're the only one who visited her without checking your watch every 5 minutes. The only one who remembered her birthday without Facebook reminding you. The only one who cried real tears when she died. That's just basic human decency." Exactly. And in Dorothy's experience, basic human decency was rare enough to deserve rewarding. Dad appeared, his face twisted with rage. "This isn't over. I'll appeal. I'll take this to a higher court." You'll do nothing," Margaret said calmly. "Because if you contest this will, I'll release the full Project Midnight Rose documentation. Every recording, every shady deal, every lie you told your mother while she was dying. The media would have a field day. Local businessman attempts to defraud dying mother. Think that would be good for your reputation?" Dad's mouth opened and closed. "Your mother gave you a choice," Margaret continued. "Accept the will gracefully and she'd keep your corruption private. Contest it and she'd burn your reputation to the ground. What's it going to be? You can't threaten me. I'm not threatening you. I'm explaining consequences. Your mother spent her life prosecuting criminals. She knew exactly how to build an airtight case. This is hers. From beyond the grave. And honestly, it's brilliant! Dad looked at me. For a moment I saw something almost like vulnerability. Almost like regret. Then it hardened. You'll never be family. You'll never be one of us. Good, I said quietly. I'd hate to be. He left, Courtney trailing behind him, still crying. Margaret put a hand on my shoulder. How are you really? Overwhelmed? Confused? I don't know what to do with all this. You don't have to do anything today. Take time. Process. The estate will be there when you're ready. She handed me a card. This is my direct line. Call me if you need anything. Legal advice, financial planning, or just someone who knew Dorothy and loved her. Did you love her? She was my mentor. My friend. And one of the smartest, fiercest women I've ever known. She saw corruption and couldn't let it stand, even from her own son. Especially from her own son. What do I do now? Now, go home. Rest. Tomorrow, we'll start the estate process. But Maya, your grandmother left you one more thing. Another letter. Personal this time, not legal. It's in the safe deposit box with all the evidence. You should read it when you're ready. I went to the bank the next morning. The safe deposit box key was exactly where Grandma had said it would be in her jewelry box, inside the pearl earring case. Box 447 was small but packed with documents. Folders labeled Morrison Correspondence, Richard Bennett Financial Records, Recorded Conversations, Ethics Complaint Documentation. And at the bottom, a sealed envelope with my name. Maya and Grandma's careful handwriting. I took it to a quiet corner of the bank and opened it. My dearest Maya, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And Richard tried exactly what I knew he would try. I'm sorry you had to go through that courtroom battle. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from it entirely. But I hope I gave you enough weapons to fight back. You're probably wondering why I did all this. Why the elaborate documentation, the code words, the insurance policy. The truth is simple. You deserved better than to be cheated by people who valued money over love. Your father, my son James, was the kindest man I ever knew. When he died in that car accident, I lost a piece of my soul. Richard blamed him, blamed you, blamed anyone but himself for the fact that James got all the warmth and love that Richard wanted, but never earned. You remind me so much of James. The way you listen, the way you care without expecting anything in return, the way you showed up every week, even when I was difficult, even when I was dying, even when there was nothing to gain but my company. That's why you get everything. Not because you earned it with devotion, though you did, not because Richard doesn't deserve it, though he doesn't, but because you're the only one who treated me like a person instead of a bank account. The money will change your life. Use it wisely. Buy a house, start a business, travel, live fully, but more importantly, use it to build a life where you're valued for who you are, not what you give. I have one request. Don't let this wealth isolate you. Don't become like Richard, measuring relationships in transactions. Stay the Maya who brought me crossword puzzles and read me terrible romance novels and cried at my bedside when you thought I was sleeping. Stay the granddaughter who loved me, not the heiress who inherited from me. I love you. I'm proud of you, and wherever I am now, I am probably laughing at the look on Richard's face when you said Project Midnight Rose. That was for you, sweetheart. That moment of power, of justice, of watching corrupt people realize they can't always win. Enjoy it. You earned it. All my love, Grandma, Dorothy. P.S. The pearl earrings in the case where you found the key. Those are yours too. Real pearls, bought in Tokyo in 1967. Wear them and think of me. I sat in that bank corner and cried. Real, ugly, gasping sobs. A security guard approached. Miss, are you okay? My grandmother died. I managed. I'm sorry for your loss. She left me everything. That's good. She left me everything, I repeated, and she made sure the people who tried to steal it couldn't. He looked confused but nodded sympathetically. I gathered the documents, put them back in the box, and took only the letter and the pearl earrings. 3 weeks later, the estate was settled. The house was Mina, beautiful craftsman in a quiet neighborhood. The investments were mine, a diversified portfolio that generated passive income. The savings were mine enough to never worry about money again. And the truth was mine, all the evidence of corruption, carefully documented and ready to deploy if anyone ever tried to challenge Grandma's decision. I moved into the house on a Tuesday. It smelled like lavender and old books. Just like Grandma, her furniture was still there. Her photos on the walls, her coffee mugs in the cabinet. I made coffee in her kitchen and sat in her reading chair and felt her presence everywhere. My phone rang. "Margaret, just checking in. How's the house?" "Perfect." "Overwhelming." I keep expecting her to walk in and tell me I'm using the wrong coffee cups. Margaret laughed. She would, too. Dorothy had opinions about everything. She paused. "I have news. Judge Morrison resigned. Took early retirement rather than face ethics charges. Your father is under investigation by the IRS. Turns out, Dorothy's documentation revealed some creative accounting on his part. Is he going to jail? Probably not. But he'll pay fines, lose credibility, face consequences for once in his entitled life. Good. There's something else. Courtney called my office, asked if there was any way to reconcile. Said she was sorry for how she acted. Does she want money? She says no, says she just wants to apologize. I told her I'd pass along the message, but that it isn't tieable, up to you whether to respond. I thought about Courtney, about the cousin who'd barely acknowledged me at family gatherings, who'd called me an embarrassment, who'd sided with Dad without question. Tell her, I need time. Maybe someday, but not now. Understood. After we hung up, I wandered through Grandma's house, my house. Each room held memories. Her bedroom, where I'd sat with her during hospice. The kitchen, where we'd baked terrible cookies and laughed at our failures. The study, where she'd worked on her cases and, later on, Project Midnight Rose. Her computer was still on her desk. Primera booted it up, a file on the desktop labeled for Maya. I opened it. More letters. Dozens of them. One dated for my 30th birthday, one for my wedding day, one for when I had my first child, one for when I felt lost, one for when I needed advice, all written in the months before she died, while she was still lucid, still planning, still protecting me from beyond the grave. I opened the one labeled for when you feel guilty. Maya, you're probably sitting in my house, surrounded by things that feel too nice for you, too expensive, too much. You're probably thinking about Richard and feeling guilty that he got nothing while you got everything. Don't. Guilt is what people like Richard use to manipulate people like you. You feel deeply, you care about fairness, and he knows that. He's counting on your guilt to make you give him what he couldn't earn. But here's the truth. This money is yours, not because you're more deserving, though you are, not because Richard is a bad person, though he is, but because I chose you, consciously, deliberately, with full knowledge of what it would mean. I spent my career prosecuting people who used power to take what they wanted. I saw how corruption worked, how entitlement festered, how people justified their cruelty with convenient narratives. I will not let my estate fund that. I will not let my death enrich people who saw me as an ATM. I will not reward neglect and punish devotion. So feel what you need to feel. Cry if you need to cry, but don't you dare give away what I fought to protect for you. This is your inheritance, your security, your freedom. Use it well. Grandma Dorothy. I closed the laptop and sat in the quiet house. Somewhere in the city, Dad was probably fuming, plotting, trying to find some angle to contest the will, despite Margaret's warnings. Somewhere, Courtney was probably crying, regretting her choices, wondering if money was worth losing family over. Somewhere, Judge Morrison was packing up his office, his reputation in tatters, his corruption finally exposed. And here, in Grandma Dorothy's house, I was free from being the forgotten grandchild. Free from being the pity case, free from watching people who did unvalue me inherit what someone who loved me wanted me to have. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Courtney. I know you don't want to talk. I understand. But I needed to say, Grandma was right about you. You were always the best of us. I'm sorry I didn't see it until it was too late. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed, thank you. Maybe coffee someday. When we're both ready, I hit send before I could overthink it. Because Grandma had taught me one final lesson. Power wasn't about revenge. It was about choosing who deserved your time, your energy, your forgiveness, and maybe, eventually, Courtney could earn those things. But Dad had made his choices. He'd valued money over his dying mother. He'd tried to corrupt the system to steal from me. He'd spent my entire life making me feel less than, other, unworthy. He could live with those choices now. I put on Grandma's pearl earrings, real pearls from Tokyo, 1967, and looked at myself in her hallway mirror. I looked like her. Same eyes, same determined expression. Same refusal to let corrupt people win. Thank you, Grandma, I whispered to the empty house, for everything, for saving me, for protecting me, for giving me the weapons to protect myself. The house didn't answer, but I felt her presence anyway. In every room, every letter, every carefully documented piece of evidence that had saved my inheritance and destroyed my father's schemes, Project Midnight Rose, had worked perfectly. And now, finally, I could bloom. 6 months later, I sat in the same coffee shop where I'd first met with Margaret, reviewing financial statements. The inheritance was invested wisely. The house was maintained beautifully. My life had transformed. But the biggest transformation wasn't the money. It was the freedom. Freedom to say no without fear. Freedom to set boundaries without guilt. Freedom to live without performing for people who'd never valued me anyway. Maya, I looked up. Courtney stood there, holding 2 coffee cups, looking nervous. I texted first, she said quickly. Asked if you'd be here. You said maybe. So I came. And I brought coffee. Iced vanilla latte, right? It was, right? Sit, I said. She sat carefully, like she was afraid I'd change my mind. I've been in therapy, she said, working through why I treated you the way I did, why I sided with Dad without question, why I valued inheritance over relationship. And I was an asshole. A privileged, entitled asshole who thought money and status were the same as worth. Grandma knew it. You knew. Italiano. Everyone except me and Dad knew it. Okay? I'm not asking for anything, she said quickly. Not money, not a relationship, not even forgiveness. I just wanted to tell you, you were right. About everything. And Grandma was right to choose you. I sipped my coffee. Dad still trying to contest the will. No. His lawyer dropped him after the IRS stuff came out. And honestly, he's broken, lost clients, lost respect, lost his reputation. He calls me sometimes. Rants about you, about Grandma, about how unfair everything is. Do you agree with him? No, she said simply. I think he got exactly what he deserved. And I think I'm lucky you're even talking to me now. We sat in silence for a moment. I'm not ready to be close, I said finally. Maybe never. The wounds are too deep. I understand. But maybe coffee sometimes. Updates, small steps. Her eyes got shiny. Small steps is more than I deserve. Probably. But Grandma taught me that grace is sometimes stronger than grudges. As long as the grace is mutual, it is, I promise. She left after 20 minutes. We didn't hug, didn't make plans. Just acknowledged that maybe, someday, we could build something new from the ashes of what had burned. My phone buzzed. Margaret, how'd it go with Courtney? Me, small steps. We'll see. Margaret? Dorothy would be proud. You're giving grace, without giving up power. That's the balance she wanted for you. Me, I'm learning. Margaret, you're thriving. There's a difference. I closed my laptop and walked out into the sunshine. Somewhere in this city, Dad was probably still plotting, still bitter, still convinced he'd been wronged. Let him. I had Grandma's house, Grandma's estate, Grandma's love, and most importantly, I had the truth she'd spent years documenting. Project Midnight Rose hadn't just saved my inheritance. It had taught me that sometimes, the best revenge is simply refusing to be a victim. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is stand up in a courtroom and say 2 words that make corrupt men go pale. Sometimes. Justice looks like a grandmother who loved you enough to arm you with weapons against the people who underestimate you. I touched the pearl earrings. My earrings knowing smiled. We won, Grandma, I whispered to the sky, just like you knew we would. And somewhere, I was sure she was smiling back.